Vamos a pasar con la celebración de un panel sobre la Declaración de Salta, por respeto y consideración con invitados especiales que tenemos durante nuestra asamblea. Cedo la palabra al compañero Martín Echeverz. Ok, hacemos un switch. Ok, hacemos un switch en los paneles que estamos previendo. Y cedo la palabra a nuestro vicepresidente and incoming president, Christopher Burns. Adelante, por favor, Christopher.
Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Barnes. I am from the Gleaner Company Media Limited in Jamaica. I will be the moderator. I would like to introduce to my right, Baibars Orsek and Karen Goldschlager. Is that right? Did I get it right? Okay, good. So I passed the first test. So Baibars is the director of the International Fact-Checking Network at the Poynter Institute, the premier global coalition of fact-checking projects. He launched some internationally recognized initiatives on fact-checking and open data and had acted as a board member of the network since December of 2016. In that capacity, he took on an active part in overseeing the fact-checking project's applications to join the network as verified signatories. Karen joined Facebook in 2018 and works on the Integrity Partnerships team, leading partnerships for their third-party fact-checking program in New York. The fact-checking program has expanded to over 50 partners around the world, covering over 40 languages since it launched in 2016. Karen's background is at the intersection of journalism and technology. Previously, she was an audience strategist at the New York Times, focused on visual journalism. Before that, she worked with publishers at Medium, the blogging network, and led business development for a startup that helped reporters crowdfund their projects. You sure you worked all at those places? It's a long time. Okay, good. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to have each of them give a short presentation, and then we're going to open it up for questions, some of which I will prompt. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Hello, everyone, and it's a very good feeling to be here. Thank you for inviting and organizing this conversation with my dear friend Karen today. So my name is Baybars. I'm actually from Istanbul, Turkey, but I have been based in St. Petersburg, Florida since last May. And here in just like a couple of minutes, I'm going to try to walk you through of the history of the IFCN and the global fact-checking movement. So this is me. This is probably you are seeing this. Before I started as the director of the IFCN, I used to work for my own fact-checking organization back in Turkey, which I co-founded back in 2014 with my friends who hadn't had a journalistic background, but due to the fundamental challenges we had in Turkey, it was a group of young activists and journalist wannabes who have started this fact-checking organization. And when we say fact-checking, I mean, you all have different perspectives on the scope of fact-checking. I will try to walk you through about a couple of different concepts. When we talk about fact-checking, it's different than the editorial fact-checking that we mostly know. And in 3 different areas, we are covering this broader efforts on fact-checking. The political fact-checking, which have been always a part of the traditional media, mostly focused on the claims and the statements made by public officials, and it covers the accuracy of those claims made by opinion makers and politicians mostly. And lately, we also have been seeing rising phenomena around debunking and verification, which focuses on the truthfulness of content that we see on social media and in different communication mediums. And the methodology is basically, yeah, wonderful. Thanks so much. That's really helpful. So when we speak about fact-checking, we mostly follow a certain methodology, which is first finding the fact-checkable claims and deciding whether they are worth to share with the broader public to know more about the accuracy of those claims. And then we go through different tools to determine the source of that fact which we are trying to verify. And in that case, we mostly face with challenges, which are what makes for a reliable source. And I'm sure most of you also have similar problems in different countries, especially on accessing reliable source, the primary and the secondary source of information. And then evaluating the claim with evidence allows us to come with a verdict whether the claim we are focusing is accurate or not. And according to the study done by the Pew Research Center, 83% of the registered voters here in the United States think that it is the media's responsibility to fact-check political campaigns and candidates. And gladly we have been experiencing lately that most media outlets, traditional and new ones, are concentrating on providing more space to fact-checking in their outlets, whether as a part of a different fact-checking unit or in their articles as inline embedded fact-checks. And with that in mind, the global fact-checking movement has started to find answers and come up with common practices to hold the powerful accountable and help readers to access reliable information. And these efforts were realized back in 2014 when the first Global Fact Conference took place in London with 40 organizations representing 20 different countries. And last June, we are happy to say that we have made to 188 different organizations from more than 60 countries. The last gathering was in Cape Town, South Africa, which is one of our efforts to do those conferences globally. The first two conferences were held in London, and then the rest we came together with different fact-checkers from around the world and with people from media, academy, and platforms in Buenos Aires, Madrid, Rome, and lately in Cape Town. And the next meeting will be in Oslo, Norway, next June. Our headquarters is the Poynter Institute in St. Petersburg. We are hosted by the Poynter Institute to run the international fact-checking efforts. While our headquarters is in the United States, in Florida, our network is highly global. We have different people from different parts of the world representing our community through our different bodies. But basically, the International Fact-Checking Network is a body for fact-checkers and serves as an umbrella organization to help those fact-checkers working in different settings. So in addition to our Global Fact Conferences, we do online and offline workshops, we publish articles and have a newsletter about the fact-checking. And very recently, our Associate Director also started to write for Univision in Spanish. So I highly suggest you also follow that, her weekly articles. And we celebrate International Fact-Checking Day on each April 2nd, just the day after the April Fool's Day, to remind people the importance of reliable information. And in addition to our global representative structure, just to support that claim, this is a network run by two journalists from Turkey and Brazil, whom both are based in the United States. And our advisory board has 7 different members, 2 from the United States, 1 from Argentina, 1 from South Africa, India, Spain, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. We are trying to address different profiles and different interests of each different of the community. And we have people in our community from political fact-checking organizations and debunking organizations, working on press media, radio, and TVs. Different goals, we are trying to help them to reach those goals. And I just had the chance to follow the last session, which allowed me to think about the challenge of working through different countries where you have different freedom of speech and public data access structures. But the biggest commonality between those organizations are that they all respect and support IFSAN's Code of Principles, and as a network, our duty is to hold them accountable to their commitments. So we are annually monitoring those organizations based on their commitments to nonpartisanship and fairness. We want fact checkers to be nonpartisan and fair and reflect that in their activities as well. A commitment to transparency of sources is essential for fact checkers because at the end of the day, we want each reader to be able to replicate a fact check and come with the same verdict using the same tools and steps. And maybe one of the most important commitments in our network is the transparency of funding and organization. We want each of our organizations to be held accountable by their readers, so they need to disclose their funding and organizational structures. And the transparency of methodology is to allow readers to replicate the same verdict using the same steps, following the same steps, and having an open and honest corrections policy to be a good example for other media outlets as well. So there's a very short video that hopefully will help you to picture our process. And if I may, no? Oops. Is there sound?
Public figures to determine whether they are true or false. Some of them also check whether that viral story you saw on social media is real. But who checks the fact checkers? You do. Trustworthy fact-checking organizations are committed to telling their fact-checking audiences who they are, how they fund their organizations, and how they do their work. Based on these commitments, the International Fact-Checking Network has created a Code of Principles. The IFCN Code of Principles promotes a series of standards such as a commitment to nonpartisanship and fairness. That means checking all sides. A commitment to transparency of sources. Fact checkers must show their evidence. A commitment to transparency of funding and organization. The public should know who runs the project and how it is supported. A commitment to transparency of methodology. How the fact-checking is conducted should be clear. A commitment to open and honest corrections, because no one is perfect, and fact-checkers should be more committed to correcting the record than anyone else. Through a network of journalism experts from around the world, the IFCN checks whether fact-checking organizations are compliant with specific criteria related to those commitments. Want to fact-check the fact-checkers? The assessment of all verified signatories are public. If you run a fact-checking organization that wants to become a verified signatory, go to our website. We want to help support an environment of truthful and reliable information. IFCN. Facts matter.
Thank you so much. And in part of this process, which is basically when an organization applies to be one of our verified signatories, we work with independent assessors from that region who assess the commitments of the applicant organization to our principles. And as of today, we have 81 organizations from 42 different countries who have been vetted as a verified signatory to our network. And in my last couple of slides, which I hope to cover in the next 2 minutes, I would like to talk about the growth of this network and what those organizations look like. In 1994, we only had one fact-checking organization who had a dedicated newsroom to fact-check political claims. And as you may see in those figures, after 2013, and especially after 2016, we have seen a big increase in the number of new organizations starting their fact-checking operations. That's probably because the 2016 elections and the whole debate on fake news afterward has played a role in this raise in the number of organizations. And lately, we have been also measuring we have been also monitoring those organizations' budgets and capacities. And compared to last year, we have been seeing more organizations, more for-profit organizations working on fact-checking, which is probably as a result of this increased awareness on fact-checking provided by more traditional media outlets. And as of 2018, we had almost half of the organizations in our network, more than half of those organizations were coming from nonprofit backgrounds, but this year we have an even distribution of nonprofit and for-profit organizations in our network. All that said, they are still underfinanced and understaffed. Fact checkers are still working on limited capacities, especially when you think about the challenges that they have to cover misinformation in their countries. They still have room to grow, both in terms of their employees and their budgets, which is visible here. We have a diverse network. Their revenue streams are mostly differ from country to country, but in our last survey, we found out that almost half of those organizations' budget were between $50,000 to $500,000 annually, and most of the organizations who were between $100,000 and $500,000 were either from the United States or Western Europe. So also there is a disparity of financial strength between the organizations in established democracies and also developing democracies. And we as IFCN are also trying to help those organizations to have more sustainable business models and help their leaders to hold the powerful and society accountable and filter out misinformation and have a healthier public discourse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baibars. So, Karen and yourself are no strangers to each other, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so he's at Pointer. You have this global network of fact checkers, and then you have Facebook. So tell us what is happening with Facebook and what Facebook is doing to reduce the spread of fake news, fake information, misinformation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chris. I feel like this is.
You want to press that?
Now it is. Okay, thank you. So hi, thank you for the intro. I'm Karen Goldschlager. I work on Facebook's News Integrity Partnerships team, and specifically, as Chris mentioned, I manage our third-party fact-checking partnership program. Mm-hmm.
It's frozen. Okay. That familiar sound. We have a problem.
Should I press? There we go. All right, clicker back in action. So Facebook was built to bring people closer together. I'm sure many of you in this room use Facebook as a social network every day. But with that connection comes a big responsibility. And that's really what the teams that work on integrity at Facebook focus on. So we're always trying to balance enabling Facebook to connect people with the need to make sure that we're creating a safe and authentic environment. So I'm going to talk a bit about our approach to integrity on the platform. There are three main things we do. First, we remove content from Facebook if it violates our community standards. When it comes to misinformation, when we know that something is false news, we reduce its spread to make sure that it can't go viral, and we provide more information to users. So on the remove point, I want to underscore that our community standards are the rules that dictate what can remain on Facebook and what will be taken down. These are available publicly on our website. I'd encourage people to look at them so you can dig into specific policies and also see when we make updates or changes. In general, there are a few values that guide our community standards, and that's ensuring safety of our users above all, making sure that we're protecting your privacy and your private information, encouraging respectful conversations on the platform, so things like hate speech violate our community standards, and finally, ensuring authenticity of content so that people can trust that what they're seeing is real. So a question that we often get asked, and which our moderator Chris has asked, why don't we simply remove false news? So this is one of the areas where we think it's most important to strike that balance between enabling people to discuss and debate different viewpoints on the platform while making sure that the most harmful viral misinformation can't be viral on Facebook. And the other important point here is that we as Facebook don't think that we should be the arbiters of what's true and what's false. So when it comes to this particular challenge, this is where we work with third-party fact-checking organizations. These are journalists who review the veracity of claims on Facebook and help us act on misinformation. And this is really where I focus my work leading our partnerships with these fact-checkers around the world. So our program started in 2017. And as you can see on this map, it was quite US and European centric. Similar to IFCN, we've grown really quickly, and a big driving force of that has been we've realized that misinformation looks different in every country, in every language, and in order to fight this challenge globally, we need to have partners with expertise in countries and languages all around the world. So this has been a really major focus of ours over the past year. And we really want to be able to say that in Brazil, we have fact-checkers fact-checking in Portuguese. In Indonesia, we have fact-checkers who work in Bahasa. In France, we have fact-checkers working in French. This is a really important part of our approach. We now have 55 fact-checking partners who work with Facebook in 44 languages. So first, I'll talk a bit about who our partners are, and then I'll talk about how the program works. You just heard Baibars explain more about what IFCN does. From Facebook's perspective, this is really important. We use IFCN certification as a prerequisite to being in our fact-checking program. And this is really valuable to us because IFCN's code of principles, which includes things he was mentioning like transparency of sources and nonpartisanship, are standards that we can use globally for the fact-checking organizations in our program. The other thing I'll mention about our partners is that they're really diverse in terms of organization type. So some of our partners are mainstream news organizations like the Associated Press, the AFP, France 24, who have really been able to build up an expertise in fact-checking and verification. And then we also work with organizations dedicated solely to fact-checking. So this is like Chequeado in Argentina, PolitiFact in the US, Boom in India. So how does the system work? When we talk about fact-checking on Facebook, there are three main steps: identify, review, act. First, Facebook identifies potential misinformation using technology. We do this with a number of signals. For example, we look at disbelief comments from our users. Users on Facebook can also send direct feedback if they think a post in their newsfeed might be false. And we also use machine learning so that we're always learning what misinformation might look like based on what we've seen and the patterns we've seen in the past. Fact checkers can also identify misinformation on their own. So this is where that local expertise really comes in catching things that our technology might not. Second, fact checkers review and rate the veracity of claims. They can choose from several ratings, including false, mixture, or true. And when they tell us that something's misinformation, they also submit a fact-checking article. This is a standard news article that explains how they reached their conclusion and helps users understand what they did to report out that piece of misinformation. These articles are available publicly on our fact-checker sites, and we also use them throughout our product. And then finally, once we know something is misinformation, we act. And again, we do that primarily by reducing the spread of that content and by showing users additional reporting that the fact checkers did. To go a bit more specific on the impact, this happens at 2 levels, first at the story level and then at the actor level. So in terms of an individual piece of content that we know is false, again, our main focus is to make sure that that content can't go viral. So we will show it lower in newsfeed and ensure that fewer people see it. We'll also make sure that if people do see it, they can access the fact checker's additional reporting so they can decide for themselves if the claims are true. And finally, if users try to share this content, we'll show them notifications. So if they've already shared something rated false, we'll give them an alert to let them know a fact checker has reviewed it. And if they go to share something that's been rated false, they'll see a pop-up that essentially lets them know to share with caution and again points them to the fact checker's reporting. So these impacts work together to make sure that the information that we know is false based on our fact-checking partners doesn't continue to spread. We also take action on bad actors, and this is one of the most important parts of the program. When I say bad actor, I mean, for example, a page who is repeatedly sharing information that's found to be false by our fact-checking partners. So when it comes to these types of actors, we take even stronger enforcements. And we do that by reducing the spread of everything their page or domain posts. We also give notifications to those publishers so they can understand why their content is being rated. One thing that's important to us is being transparent about this process. So publishers can actually see the entire status of their page in something we call the page quality tab. And that'll show them everything that's been fact-checked in addition to other violations like community standards or intellectual property violations. And finally, we want to remove the incentives for these types of actors to continue sharing misinformation. So we will actually remove their ad and monetization rights so that, again, they recognize the impact of continuing to share false news. In addition to these direct impacts of the fact-checking program, we're also always looking at broader ways to give our users context about the information they're seeing. So one example of that is the context button. You may have seen this in your newsfeed. It appears on articles that are shared by publishers. And if you click into it, you can see information like who the publisher is, when they started, and where their content is being shared. And again, the goal here is to help users learn about the content from publishers that they're seeing so they can decide for themselves what they should trust and if it's something that they should further share. So now that I've talked about the program overall, I want to dial in a bit to the work that we're doing across Latin America. And I really want to underscore here that our partnerships are what makes this program possible. So without fact-checking organizations on the ground, we as Facebook would not be able to act specifically on false news on the platform. We currently have 8 partners total across Latin America who work in both Spanish and Portuguese. So in Brazil, in Colombia, we work with La Cia Vacía, Colombia Check, and the AFP. And I want to note that AFP is actually a global partner of ours who we work with in multiple countries and languages around the world, which has really helped us grow our fact-checking coverage quickly. In Brazil, we work with Agencia Lupa, EOS Fatos, and most recently brought on Estadão Verifica, in addition to working with AFP. In Mexico, we work with Animal Politico and the AFP. And in Argentina, we work with Chequeado and the AFP. So in addition to these individual partnerships, we've also supported broader media efforts to bring multiple newsrooms together to debunk misinformation and help users understand what's true and what's not. This has been particularly effective ahead of elections when it's most critical for people to understand more about the information they're seeing. So ahead of Mexico's elections, we worked with our partner Animal Politico, who led the launch of Verificado. Currently, we're supporting Reverso, which is a consortium in Argentina of more than 100 media organizations and fact-checking partners during their electoral campaign. We're also supporting Comprova for the second year, and we've supported the launch of Red Check in Colombia, led by our partner Colombia Check. Finally, one of the goals of the Facebook Journalism Project, which is a team I'm part of, is to support broader skills and trainings for news organizations so that more organizations can learn how to verify what they're seeing on social media, do this debunking, and do this kind of fact-checking. So we have a global partnership with Storyful, which is a social media intelligence agency who does these trainings worldwide. And most recently, we've offered Storyful trainings in Argentina, Colombia, and Uruguay. So, looking forward, where do we go from here? As I mentioned, international expansion is a big focus of ours, but so is making sure that we deepen the fact-checking partnerships we have, expand to more languages, and add partners in countries where we already have fact-checking. We're actively looking at expansions across both Latin America and the US now. And then the best part of our job is that this partnership enables us to listen and learn from our fact-checking partners. So Facebook is not a journalistic organization. We are not experts on what misinformation looks like in any given country or language. That's really where we leverage the expertise of our partners. And working closely with them and also with IFCN is what really helps us learn where we need to move our program, our products, and our policies. So, final note, if you want to learn more about our program, you can visit this link. It has the full list of our current partners around the world. It'll tell you more about our rating scale, and it'll tell you more about some of the impacts that I talked about when we find this information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. I just had a quick question in relation to Facebook and its efforts. So what I understand is that you have your own network as well. So you work with Pointers Network and you have established your own network. Is that correct?
So IFCN is the network that certifies all of our partners, and that's a prerequisite to joining our partnership program.
Okay, and that's through Pointer. Okay, all right, okay, good. And how much, just to give us an idea, how much money does Facebook invest in this project?
Yeah, so we don't disclose the specifics of the financial relationships we have with our partners. We do pay fact-checking organizations for this work. It's obviously resource intensive, and I think it's clear through the expansion that it's an area we're continuing to invest in.
And so if there are persons in this crowd who represent media houses who want to become fact-checking organizations, obviously they have to go through the certification process, but Facebook is open to having discussions, and what's the criteria?
Yeah, so I would definitely say talk to this guy because IFCN is one of the main criteria, but in addition, when we look at expansion, we really think about where we're missing partners around the world. So as new partners get IFCN certified, we review if that's somewhere where we already have partners, where we need more partners, and we also look really closely at events that are happening around the world. So we tend to expand, for example, ahead of the elections in India, we brought on several new partners in India, to try to see where the need is most severe.
Okay, great. You have anything to add to that?
Maybe I can briefly talk about the process that we have at IFCN when a new organization wants to join our network. It's basically an open application that you can do through our website, ifcn-principles.pointer.org. It's a long URL, I know. But in addition to our certification, we also provide capacity building related trainings to newsrooms who want to start fact-checking units. In part of this effort, we also provide in-person teaching, in-person trainings, and just this year we will be in 7 different countries to come up with new organizations who are working to start their own fact-checking units. Just last week we were in Colombia. Next 2 weeks we will be coming together with organizations from Lebanon, India, and Thailand. So we are also expanding our footprint around the regions where we don't have organizations working on fact-checking. So please feel free to reach out if you have any interest on learning more about this process and the certification.
I think you'll be making a lot of friends after this panel. Are there any questions from the audience? Anybody has any questions of Bars? Karen? I see somebody getting up over there, I think. The light is blinding. Ed, you were going to say something? Okay, come. Find a mic.
Hi, I have a question. You explained the processes behind what you do. Could you provide some data behind that? How much fake news or false information is out there? You explained identify, check, inform, remove, etc. But how much bad information is out there, for example? Question to both of you.
Sure, I can take that first because the identify, review, act are all of our phrases. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of content posted on Facebook every day, and we don't have the ability to check all of it to see what is misinformation. So one of the key focuses of our fact-checking program is making sure that we are focusing on finding the most viral misinformation with the potential to harm and mislead people, so that we're really focused on that challenge, knowing that we can never catch every piece of content on the platform. One of our key goals is to improve the way that we measure so that we can have a clear sense of progress. But what we do know is that as we add more partners, we're able to fact check more content, and that results in a really big downstream impact, again, in terms of reducing the spread of information, notifying users, and also making sure that we're stopping bad actors from continuing to share.
So just to follow up though, in the interest of transparency, right, which this is all about transparency, doesn't Facebook have some sort of metric that says 3% of all the content that's posted on Facebook, or 3% of whatever we check is fake or false?
Yeah, so again, we don't have a way to check all of the content on Facebook for what's potential misinformation, and that's why we really rely on the fact-checking partners to use their local expertise about, in any given country, in any given language, in any given time, what's in the news, what's most important to fact-check, and that's how we focus on finding what we think is most important, rather than trying to check everything on the platform.
What about you, Bywars? So all your certified network, do they have reports that say?
Sure. So in our network, we have 80 organizations who have been certified as our verified signatures, and as Karen said, 55 of them are partnering with Facebook. So probably my answer should be mostly limited to our broader network, not related to Facebook, because as Karen said, it's been not that easy on their end as well to measure the ratio of misinformation throughout all the content shared on Facebook. But some of our signatories in our network have been sharing some of their metrics that they have, both working on Facebook and also on other mediums as well. But again, that's and a different version of this question is always addressed to fact checkers in a way that how much of your fact checks are true or false. So people also ask fact checkers how much of their fact checks are true or false, and it's also hard to measure, because at the end of the day it's an academic sample, because there's also this the process of selection, which mostly fact checkers are mostly encouraged to find false information, to fact check and share the accuracy with the public. So even that wouldn't be probably a useful sample to say this part of this ratio of those whole content fact checkers have fact checked are true or false. But yeah, and also as far as I know, a couple of those fact-checking organizations are also publishing their annual reports, not on the Facebook partnership, but on their broader fact-checking efforts. So it's also interesting to compare those figures from one country to another.
Okay, perfect. One final question, very quick, unless there are any questions from the audience. I don't see any. format. So you fact check articles, you fact check photographs, deepfake videos, all of that. So you're trying to detect everything at Facebook and in the network.
Sure. So this has been one of the biggest areas of progress for our program. When we started, we only had the ability for fact checkers to fact check article links. And over the past couple years, we expanded the ability to fact check images and then videos and even text-only posts. So now we essentially cover all of the content formats on the platform, and we know from speaking to our partners that most of the work that they do tends to be more visual information these days. So memes, images, out-of-context videos, etc.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here in the presentation, and I'm sure you're going to have more interest from the floor.
Thank you.